Let's take it slow. Where you go, I go too. And if you hit the bottom, I'm going down with you. Let's take it slow. Who cares where we gotta be? You know you'll have a good time wherever you're with me. Let's take it.
So this video is basically about why I decided to buy a Honda Cub, or Honda Super Cub. Well, we'll just call it the Cub. That's what they are at the end of the day. Why I bought it, what I think of it, and why I am now a total convert to small motorcycles. I suppose it'll be best to start with my motorbiking backstory. I've been riding motorbikes now in excess of 40 years. And I would say the last 20 years or so, it's all been big touring bikes. Things like the Honda Pan-European, the Triumph Trophy. I even had a Honda Goldwing. I'd done a recent trip to Scotland from Devon. It's a trip of about 550 miles, give or take. And the BMW was absolutely sublime in respect of the fast roads and the motorways. There's probably not many other bikes I would have preferred to use it for to actually get to Scotland. So I arrived in Scotland, and obviously I wanted to do some exploring. And a lot of the type of roads where I was were very, single track roads, light gravel roads, that type of thing. And a good example of that was a road I found called the Three Lochs Forest Drive, which is just north of Loch Lomond. Absolutely beautiful road that runs through the forest. But to be honest, the BMW was just far too big and heavy, far too cumbersome. I was in constant fear of dropping the blooming thing, and it just wasn't any fun. I just craved a smaller bike to do that route on. So I gets back home and made the decision to sell the bike. I'd already bought the Honda Cub prior to my Scotland trip, but with a slight heavy heart, it was sold. And I don't really regret it, to be honest. I just wasn't enjoying it anymore, and it was time for a change. And actually getting a hold of a Honda Cub was easier said than done. It was a 6-month waiting list to buy a new one. I think that was down to COVID and the availability of parts and new motorbikes. So I settled on a used one from a dealer. I'd only done a few hundred miles and in very good condition, so it was like new really. But it wasn't the cheapest thing, and in fact I think it was about £100 less than a brand new one. Despite haggling with the dealer, I couldn't really get it down anymore. So it was what it was, and I have no regrets about purchasing it whatsoever. I do think there's two types of purchases in life. There's the practical, pragmatic purchasers, and there's the romantic purchasers. And certainly the Cub fell into the latter. There was certainly more practical, cheaper options for me to buy. But it was a bit like Andy from Little Britain. I want that one. I remember looking around my local dealer before I bought the Cub, and there was other options, things like the Honda SH125, the Honda Vision. I even looked at a couple of Vespas. And they're all nice bikes in their own way, but they just didn't do it for me like the Honda Cub did. They just didn't seem to have the same kudos of the Cub. Kudos and Cub. There's two terms you don't hear together very often. So my thoughts on the Cub, a mini review if you like. I guess I've got two regrets in life. One was not owning a Honda Cub, and the other was a bike I absolutely adored as a kid, was the Rally Chopper, but could never afford one. I mean, I would look like a prize Pratt on a Rally Chopper now, so that boat sailed. But I've got the Cub. I mean, some may say I look like a prize Pratt on the Cub, but I can live with that. My daughters likened me sitting on the Cub to a hippopotamus sitting on a razor blade. Little harsh, but it is what it is. And again, I don't really care what people think. I personally love the look of the Cub. I love the colour scheme, the little red seats, the retro Honda badges, the clocks. Everything about it is just nice. It's just aesthetically pleasing to my eyes anyway. Handling? Well, not too bad actually. You can whiz about on it quite safely, as long as you bear in mind you've got skinny little tyres, a basic suspension, and light quirky handling. But take your time, it's a fun experience. The suspension? It's very basic, but it works. Again, take your time, avoid the potholes, and treat it with a little bit of respect. Is it as comfortable as a BMW RT 1250? Of course it's not. It was never meant to be. To be honest, the comfort levels on the bike far exceeded my expectations. A recent example, I took the Cub down to Cornwall, down to Land's End, potted around the country lanes, visited some of the coastal routes. The trip was 450 miles over 3 days, and the comfort was absolutely fine, to be honest. Some of the days I was on the bike 6, 7 hours, and yes, your bum gets a little bit sore after an hour or two, but get off, have a stretch, and you're fine. So yeah, it far exceeded my expectations in that department, and I would definitely consider taking it further afield. Maybe it's a trip to Europe or something. I would have no qualms about doing that whatsoever. Reliability. I've only had the bike a couple of months, done a couple of thousand miles on it, but so far so good. I mean, the Cub is legendary in terms of its reliability. I mean, people have taken these things round the world and back with very little issues, and I've got no reason to believe that the bike won't give me many, many miles and many years of good service. I mean, some people may argue that engineering, manufacturing isn't as good as it was years ago. I don't know about that. I've got every confidence the bike will be absolutely fine. In terms of maintenance, I mean, I'm no mechanic, but an oil and filter change is an absolute piece of cake. Just keep the thing clean, oil and adjust the chain now and again. I think I've adjusted it once since I've had it. So yeah, no problems with that whatsoever. Any negatives to the bike? Well, at the end of the day, it's a little 125cc engine. So obviously it's not very powerful. Even by 125cc standards, it's not really very powerful. I think it pumps out 10 brake horsepower. I could be wrong on that, but it's around that. So living in an area where I live in Devon, it is extremely hilly. I mean, there's regular hills, 15, 20, 25% and upwards to get up. But it'll do it. I mean, you're down into second, sometimes first gear. You're down to maybe under 10 mile an hour on some of them. But it'll get there. The only other thing I can think of really is using it, or not using it rather, on busy roads, busy fast roads, dual carriageways, that sort of thing. I mean, the bike simply isn't quick enough or powerful enough to keep up with the traffic, and I avoid it like the plague, to be honest. When I'm planning to go somewhere, I use routes that I would use a bike on, basically. So you're looking at quieter roads. Yes, it's going to take you longer to get to your destination, but that's half the fun of it, I think. The other thing I've occasionally encountered is impatient car drivers, putting it very politely. For example, if I'm going up a really steep hill down to sort of 10, 15 miles an hour or whatever, you get people right up your backside sometimes, occasionally flashing you. But my advice is just don't get wound up by that sort of thing. Pull over when you can, when it's safe to do so. Let them pass and go on your merry way. The pub on the left here, it's called the Warren House Inn, and apparently it has a famous fire that's been burning non-stop since 1845. Now there's an interesting fact for you. So if you haven't already gathered, I absolutely love my Honda Cub. Absolutely brilliant bit of kit. Best thing I've bought in a long time. I'm under no illusion of the limitations of a bike like this, and I may well get another bike, a bigger bike, something like a V-Strom, a Versys 650, something like that. But that's another story anyway. And also little random encounters like this. I mean, random people will just come up and talk to you because of the Honda Cub. And I rarely had that on any other bike I've owned, to be honest. I remember many years ago the old Honda adverts, and they used to say, "You meet the nicest people on a Honda." And actually, that is true. I've so found that. So to sum up, I really feel absolutely liberated on this little bike. It's a pretty much take me anywhere, go anywhere, do anything on it, and that's what I like about it. It's so light and maneuverable. I mean, I've had my fill of touring bikes, big adventure bikes. I know they've all got their place, and there's some fantastic bits of kit out there. But for me now, they're just too heavy. They're too expensive and not so much fun. I'd so recommend anybody thinking about getting a small motorbike is just go for it, because I don't think you'll ever look back. I don't think I ever will. So I come to an end on my ramblings. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate it if you give it a like. If you didn't like the video, then I'm sorry. Well, you're probably not even watching it at this point anyway, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. So thank you for watching, and have a good day, people. Oh yeah, get yourself a small bike. You'll not look back. And remember, it's not about the destination, it's the journey.